So if you ride a OneWheel or you work on OneWheels, you ride on trails, this is the place for you. Welcome to Aboveboard.
Episode 3.
Episode 3.
We're getting old hat.
So today we're going to talk about remembering your first ride. So let's start there.
Well, shout out to my niece Shay. I'm sure she's not going to be watching this, but so we live in Northern Illinois. I have family down in Arizona, and I was down there. It was just shy of 5 years ago now, and COVID was in full swing, the whole deal. And so I was down there, and I knew what a OneWheel was.
Yeah.
And I'll be straight with you guys. I thought, that is the dumbest looking thing. That's such a dorky looking thing. And so anyway, that was my impression of them when I had seen them, whatever, previous to this. So I'm down in Arizona, and my niece Shay was talking about something or other, and something about injuries or whatever. And she goes, "Oh yeah," she said, my wrist was healing up. I'm like, okay, healing up, with the wrist.
Yeah.
So she said, "Yeah, we have one of those one-wheel skateboard things." I said, "Those things are," I was criticizing them, like, they look so stupid. She goes, "Oh, they're addictive when you ride it." She goes, "But I fell off, broke my wrist." And she said, "My husband fell off, broke his same wrist, same type of break."
Oh my gosh.
So she said within apparently a brief period of time,
oh boy,
they had each broken their wrist on it, and so I kind of rolled my eyes. Well, then I got back into Illinois, and then my son Jeremiah, who does videography podcasts for a living, he advised us on some things regarding our podcast, how horrible it was. No, he gave us some advice, and but he. Independently of my niece down in Arizona, I come back up here to Illinois, and my son goes, "Hey, these one-wheel things, they're supposedly really good for videoing because they're hands-free. With an electric skateboard, you need a controller, whatever. These things are hands-free. It's body posture that." And he said, "So you can circle around people while holding a gimbal camera," and
a few minutes later.
So he's like, "Yeah, you can track with people, with a gimbal camera, or circle around them or whatever." And he said, "I think I'm going to get one for my business." And I'm like, I don't know, So the pint had just come out. The OG pint was very new at the time, and in fact, that's what my niece and brother-in-law have. And so I thought, well, my son's going to buy one of these things. I should probably get one. And my other son, he and my older son can ride together then. So I went and got an OG pint and brought it home. And I was so bad on this thing. It was horrible. And so I was in my storage room with my hands on the workbench, going back and forth on it. The first time I rode it, I was up the street. It was so bad. And and then my boys just would disappear on them. They're gone. I'm like, I had an electric skateboard that I had actually built from scratch, and maybe that's something I should bring in and show.
That'd be cool.
But I had built that from scratch, so I went riding with them on the electric skateboard, and they were on the OneWheels. But I very quickly noticed the limitations of a normal four-wheel skateboard versus the one-wheel platform with the big fat tire in the middle of the whole deal. So then I'm like, all right, I gotta get my own board. So I got an XR. Actually, this it's a 4212 firmware. XR is the first large format board that I bought. So I bought an OG pint, which I still have, and it's in pieces currently because there's a BMS issue with it. OG pint life. And then I bought this XR, and and that's a whole nother story that we'll get into. That'll be next week's podcast.
There you go.
The origin of tech rails. But so I'm getting way off into the weeds on this, but so I have this OG pint. So before even getting my XR, I'm on the OG pint, and I'm riding with my other son, and I knew nothing about one-wheeling. There wasn't really much info out there. And in fact, I hadn't even seen any Facebook forums. I'm sure they existed, but I hadn't even checked. All I knew is we had this PEV that we were going to mess with. So my son and I were riding the Pints, and again, I knew nothing about it, hadn't really researched it, didn't understand nosediving. I mean, I understand electric propulsion. I made electric bicycle stuff in the past, but we were going for a ride, and I'm rounding a corner, and I had no safety gear on. I'm on the pavement, round a corner, and I lean in to accelerate, and it's pushing back.
Gave it some...
And I had no idea what pushback was. Well, I kind of knew. I knew anyway. But I thought the pushback was, just to tell people to slow down.
So did that Pint, you were riding the Pint, right?
Yeah.
So did it beep at you early on or no?
No.
Okay.
No. And I don't even think they did at that time. It was just pushback. And but the OG Pints, they're wimpy little boards, though. I mean, for a kid, they're awesome because of the lightweight. But for a full-grown adult, they're just fine unless you push it. So I was pushing it hard, and I'm leaning into it, and it's pushing back, and I'm leaning forward. So I literally grunted when I did this. I pushed down. I went, because I was like, come on, it's got to accelerate. So I pushed down, nose dove really hard into the pavement. I don't know, for those of you that have seen this newbie confidence graph, it's this graph, and it's experience versus confidence, whatever. Yeah. Overconfident, and with no experience, overconfident, and then there's an arrow that says nosedive, and then all of a sudden your confidence goes really down, and after a while, it takes a long time for that confidence to build. So I shoved the nose down really hard, nose dove into the pavement, at whatever the Pint was maxing out at the time, 15, 16, whatever, miles an hour, 17 maybe.
Yeah.
So I nosedive into the pavement, no safety gear on, and to my credit, a lot of BMX and dirt bike experience. As soon as the board nose dove, I rotated. So I'm right foot forward, so I rotate hard because I didn't want to go face first or side first into the pavement. So the board nose dove, and I rotated. So I landed on my back and hit my head on the pavement. And it's the only time in my life, I've hit my head really hard before. It's the only time I've ever seen stars. So boom, I hit the pavement, and my son's right next to me, and I mean, I'm still laying down. My head is still rebounding off the pavement. Boom, I saw stars. Because I see this sprinkling of, and so my son's like, Dad, don't get up. But all the neighbors, they're all, they're mowing their grass and watering their gardens. It's a Saturday morning, and so everybody, oh my goodness, so I'm embarrassed as anything. I get up and I put my hand, and I'm bleeding.
Oh my God!
So I get on the board. I'm not. My son's like, Dad, you're an old man. I was 49 at the time.
You
He's
okay?
like, yeah, stay down. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. All these people are, no. So I get on the board. I take off. We get home, and I'm like, I'm bleeding, and no concussion or anything. I had no headache afterward. I mean, I was, I got off really lucky. And after that, boy, I slowed. And it's not speed so much that gets you. It's pushing the board. Anytime you're pushing the board beyond its limits.
Yeah. You forget that board's going, let's say it's going 10 miles per hour. And your body is, right around 180. Mm-hmm. And that body just keeps going when that board stops.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and it whips you into the pavement. Like when you nosedive, for those of you that have never nosedived on a board.
Everybody doesn't know what to do.
So as it is, you're already leaning forward, and that's the whole point to a nosedive is you're leaning forward. So it's not, if you're standing perfectly upright and you start to stumble, you can kind of catch it. You're already leaning forward in the direction you're traveling.
Yeah.
Then it nosedives, and it nosedives because you're leaning too far. So you're leaning forward already. You lean forward even further, then it nosedives. And when it nosedives, the board kind of digs in, and so it rips your legs out from underneath you.
Yeah.
So you're not only not upright, you're already facing the pavement. And your legs get pulled out from under you the other direction. Yeah. So it whips you down. It's like a millisecond.
Oh, I know.
You get whipped into the pavement, and I just, so after that, my wife is awesome. She never complains about any of my hobbies. I mean, motorcycles or firearms or, the electric bicycles I have that are insane, 40 miles an hour and 20 horsepower wheelie ripping things. she's totally okay with anything I want to do.
Yeah.
Like I've told her I want to go skydiving. She's like, that's awesome. You know, she is all about it. I am super lucky. And also to her credit, she's great at gifts. And so not her love language, if you subscribe to that sort of thing, but she's really good at gifts. So then for my birthday, which was in July, this would have been June.
Yeah.
Of 21, I guess. So in July then, for my birthday, she had gotten me a helmet and wrist guards and gloves and stuff. And so I thank you, Cheryl. I really appreciate that. And I wear it every ride. It's like a seatbelt. If I forget to put it on, I feel something's missing. I feel naked without it. You know, same thing without my gear.
Yeah.
I don't, even if I'm about to test a part, I'm going to throw a part on a board. I just got to test it. Mm-hmm. I'll get on it and I'm like, I'm just going to do a circle in front of my house. And I'm like, I just can't do it. I got to go get my helmet. You know. So that was my very early on, and I can get into riding, you know, little tips or tricks to riding, but I want to hear you.
All right,
how did you get into it?
Here's how I got into one-wheeling. Somehow, some way on my Facebook feed, I see a Future Motion commercial. And in the back of my mind, I was like, man, I've seen this thing before. And one of my old employees...
And your thought was, that's the dorkiest looking, right?
I was like, there's no way this body's getting on that thing. That's what I was thinking.
Well, you've lost a bunch of weight.
I have. And
you were heavier at the time, too?
I was probably, at the time, I was still in my losing phase. I was probably 70 pounds more. 70?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm right around 210 right now.
Congratulations, by the way. I lost 43 pounds at one point in my life. Can't imagine losing that much weight.
Well,
so props to Dave. Very humble, but...
If you want some secrets, I'll let you know.
It is a difficult task.
It is.
I consider myself kind of a food addict, so I haven't. It is 1:18 in the afternoon. I haven't eaten yet today. I do intermittent fasting because it's a battle for me every day.
Well, that's one of the things I did.
So all right, and I haven't even asked you about that. So anyway, go ahead.
All right, so going back, this thing popped up on my feed. So I'm like, you know, I'm doing pretty good losing weight. And my balance at the time was horrible. And, you know, it has a lot to do with probably diet and, you know, overweight, and there's a lot of factors to it. So I was like, that'd be kind of fun. You know, it's February. It was end of January of last year.
1 year ago.
1 year.
1 year ago.
Yeah. So, you know, I start looking on Facebook, Marketplace, and I find this guy on there named, you know, his name's Michael. He's out in Rockford, Illinois. And he had like 3 or 4 OneWheels that he was, you know, trying to sell or trade or whatever. So we make a deal, and I end up trading. I used to have a drone business, so I do commercial drone work for, you know, realtors and contractors and stuff. So I was like, and this drone sat for a good year and a half, 2 years. And it was a very nice drone, cost a lot of money. It was a great DJI drone, one of the top ones at the time. So I'm wheeling and dealing with them, you know, and he had this Pint X. And I was like, wow, it's a little beat up, you know. I was like, man, I want that X, because I was looking at all the stats, my weight, the speed on it. I was like, the range. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the board for me. Well, after some negotiation, I walked away with a Pint. All right, so I had my first Pint. It was beat the crud. But, you know, I had my first board. So I go out there, we do exchange, we met at a place, and, you know, we fly the drone. He, you know, checks the look of the drone, everything's working. He's like, do you want to get on the board and drive? I'm like, nope, I don't know how to ride this thing. I'm going to figure it out at the house. I go home.
So did he ride it for you to make sure that it worked?
Yes, he did ride it for me. He hopped around.
Because you know we're going to get comments from people. So he didn't even turn it on.
Yeah, and I know he's well known in the area too. So he, you know, listen, he started this whole thing about me. He did.
So do you keep in contact with him?
No, I haven't. No, but
you should reach out to him.
I know that there's some friends on there I'm friends with him. I think I'm friends with him. Yeah, and then he has some friends that I'm friends with on there. So it just kind of worked out, right? So, and thank you, Michael, for trading me the drone for the OneWheel, because you started all of this, Michael. You did. So, okay. So, And it was wintertime, just like this. Like my driveway had snow on it, just like it has right now. And I'm figuring out, I got to ride this thing. So I'm riding it. I actually rode it down in the basement, tootled around, holding on to the bars. Okay, this is, figure out how to turn off safety stop on it so I didn't roll backwards and fall. So got my courage up and I went down the road and went around. There's a camp across the street that I live at, around, and went around there. And I'm filming my stuff on, my phone. I posted on Facebook. First comment I got: "You're one of those guys that doesn't ride with a helmet on."
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Completely called out. Went out and got a helmet,
Mm-hmm.
and
which is actually a good thing. I admit it's a little embarrassing when people point that stuff out, but it really is.
It caught me off guard, but I get it.
It's a good thing. It really
so, is. Fast forward, pint lasted about this long. It's right there. It's all tricked out now. I go down and I get the XRC, right? And I'm riding that. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm over, my wife works at a school just down the road, and I'm riding around over the school. And I was very lenient of hopping off a curb. It's probably a good thing, but I hopped off the curb. I had my helmet on. I hop off the curb, and I don't have enough speed going. So I hit the curb, fall forward.
Oh, and it launched.
It launched. I fell back, and I had my helmet on, and I made a dent in my helmet like you wouldn't believe. And today, my helmet's not down here, but I saved myself on that one.
I knew where this was
whoever
going.
called me out.
When you told me that when you just now said you were going slow, and I'd never heard this story before, but
yeah,
you go down a curb, you kind of have to have a little bit of speed because even if you smack the tail, as long as the board lands and you can right it immediately, you're good. But if you creep down a curb, that's horrible.
Right.
And you can go down and hit your head on the curb.
Oh yeah. So that's, I wised up real quick here. Now I got all the gear. And we're going to, one of the, upcoming episodes, that's something I want to talk about is the gear that I wear when I race and stuff. And granted, I'm not a big racer. I've been in one race. We're going to change that this year. But that's kind of my story. Let's go on to this second part of my story real quick here. Again, super cold in Illinois, and I ride in my basement. I got a good-sized basement, and I'm tootling around down here, just to ride, right? And I ride the GTSR, I ride the XRC, and I ride the Pint. Well, when you ride these two down here, you can go fast and slow down real quick, right? Well, you tend to forget when you hop on the old Pint. I nosedive right out there. Board went flying. Made a huge noise. I make a skid mark on my concrete out there from the bumper, and my wife's going, "Are you okay down there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Skidded up my knee, hurt my elbow. Just the pride's gone from me, right?
Oh yeah.
She's like, "I heard something crash down there." I'm like, "Oh, geez, there's Christmas ornament stuff's down there, And I'm like, "No, everything's okay." Hop up, act like nothing's wrong. I got a big gash on my leg, in my kneecap, but, you just forget sometimes. No power, lots of power. Well, lots of power, Well,
yeah, I mean, so a GTS is, I know, probably twice the power of a Pint.
Oh yeah.
And I got to say.
And no helmet on either.
Oh yeah. Well, you were inside, so you wouldn't.
I was inside.
You wouldn't.
Who knows?
So when I got my XR, and you don't. When you're new, you don't know, whatever, and you don't think power is ever going to really be needed. Well, for those of you that own or have owned an OG XR. And this board, though anyway, that's next podcast to discuss it, but this board is completely stock XR electronics, battery, motor, controller, everything, totally stock. XRs are, it's almost like you've got a rubber band connected between the deck and the controller as far as tilt. So you get on an XR, you level it, and then you got to really drop the nose a lot to get it to start accelerating a little bit. It's a spongy board, and they really lack power. And they actually surge. It's something you would have never experienced before because the modern architecture, when they went to the Pint, that's the new chassis architecture, but it's also the new hardware. The circuit board architecture is different. The firmware is different. Everything's different.
Yeah.
And so with the XR platform, when you're approaching its torque limit, it will surge. So like if you're climbing up a hill, it'll kind of, it'll pulse like that and surge right before it shuts down on you. So you learn to read the surge. In fact, even modest hills, you really can't. You have to get some speed and then maintain speed or even decelerate as you climb a hill on an OG XR. They are wimpy. And knowing that, though, I've never gone down on my XR. No, I take that back. I did, but it wasn't power related. I've gone down on the Pint because of lack of power. My XR, so the OG XR came with the OGs that have been in this for a long time will remember the Vega tire.
Oh, yeah.
Vega go-kart tires. Very flat profile across the top of the tire. And a lot of people call it a rolling pin. Like, it doesn't want to lean.
Yeah.
And so, and that was the beauty of the OG XR. You get on it, and it's stable. I mean, there no speed, wobbles or anything. And people would curse that Vega. Stupid Vega, that tire sucks. I don't know. I didn't know. It was great. I mean, the Pint was so squirrely compared to the XR.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is great. It's more stable. I can cruise around and not get the speed wobbles. Well, the first aftermarket tire I got was a Whisper, an OG Whisper, the first Whisper tire, Flight Fins.
Oh, Flight Fins, okay.
So, and the Whisper, it's known as being super lightweight, and it is. It's a very thin walled tire, and but it's got a very rounded side to side, sidewall to sidewall, rounded profile. So very carvy tire, and now I love it. Great tire. I've got a couple boards with Whispers on them. Great tire. But I went from the most difficult tire to steer, the Vega, the stock Vega that came on the XR. To give you an idea how hated those Vegas were, you couldn't give them away.
Right.
People would say, I have a brand new Vega, never rode it. I bought an XR, took the Vega off, put an aftermarket tire on it. It is brand new. Pay me for shipping. And nobody would, hatred people had for that tire. Well, but I didn't know. Well, so I go from that to the Whisper, which is super squirrely. So I get on my board, and I made it 8 feet before I fell. I get on it, and whoa, left, right, and I went down.
Really?
Yeah. And but then I knew what to expect, so I got on the board, and I'm like, okay, and I'm going real slow, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, whoa, is it nimble? But that opened my eyes to really how a board could perform.
Yeah.
So, this board, again, we'll be talking about it next week, but this board, I did this work to it less than a month after buying it. And in fact, it says Tech Forum Products. Doesn't even say Tech Rails on it because Tech Rails didn't exist at the time.
There you go.
Eventually, I had stickers made for Tech Rails that I stuck on there. But when I built that board, Tech Rails didn't exist. I didn't know I was going to make any aftermarket parts. So I was very early on loving the platform, but it was such a simplistic platform. I'm like, there's got to be something I can do to this thing to improve it. And so WTF Rails were just at the time like the newest of new things, and I didn't know anything about them.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know anything really about modding boards. Really, a tire was all you could do that I knew of at the time.
Right.
I mean, you could get different grip tape. That was about it. Grip tape. Rail guards, rail protectors. Those were really a thing for a while. Now, almost nobody. They're starting to come back in vogue. I'm getting a few requests, but rail protectors.
Rail protectors as the ones like
that stick on.
The stick-on ones. Future Motion has ones that kind of actually they're like 3D printed and they just go around.
They kind of go around.
Yeah, and it gives you. It'll take an old Pint.
Oh yeah.
And it'll make it look brand new.
Rail protectors are awesome, especially in my OG Pint. Same thing. I mean, within a week, it looked like it was in a demolition derby.
Yeah,
it was absolutely beat to death.
Yeah,
and so I Yeah, so I was just looking for something to modify, but that was just because I fell in love with the board.
Yeah.
And it was funny too. My wife was like, well, whatever, another hobby. I think one of the things Dave and I have in common is we both were hobby people.
Yeah.
We get into stuff and have to accessorize it and all that.
Yeah.
And there was virtually nothing in the way of aftermarket parts available when I first got into it.
Yeah, that's a question I have is that, so One-Wheeling's been out for what? 10 years or 11 years?
Yeah, 10 years ago, I think is when they first. 10 years ago.
Yeah. So for the first 5 years, it was just the Plus and then the XR.
Well, so the first board from Future Motion was the V1, and that was initially developed through a Kickstarter campaign. I wouldn't mind getting one.
I think I heard it overly produced, right? I mean, there was a lot of extra funds there.
The Kickstarter campaign was very successful for them, and so that was the V1. Part of me wants to get a V1 just to have it, but honestly, it looks just like an XR. You have to really know it's a V1 when you're looking at it. So, I don't know, maybe I'll look for a mint condition XR to stick on a shelf or something.
I think that would be kind of cool to have a little vintage wall. Vintage wall,
yeah. But it was the V1, and then the Plus came out. Now, the Plus, though it looks like a V1, very different board, completely different motor.
Yeah.
Different means in which the motor attaches to the chassis, different foot pads, but it was the same, it looks the same from the side, but the Plus was very different. The XR was the high performance version of the Plus, and that's sort of become Future Motion's go-to, which is also common for automotive manufacturers, motorcycle manufacturers, and that, which is you come out with a new platform, then you make a higher performance version of that platform, maybe even a higher performance version beyond that. So it was the V1, then the Plus, then the XR, then the Pint came out. The Pint was the first completely new platform, totally different design.
And they pushed that for like people getting around the city and stuff.
Yeah, well, and so initially, if I remember right, now this is before my time. So bear in mind, a lot of this is stuff that I learned after the fact because I got into it 5 years ago.
That's crazy. Only 5 years ago, and you've done all of this stuff.
Well, I mean, you've only been in it for a year.
Yeah,
you've already been to a race, and so
yeah, I guess yeah.
But yeah, so 5 years ago when I got into it. That was halfway through Future Motion's life cycle, but so the Pint came out, and that was the first completely new architecture board, and has a much more finished look. So I'll make an exaggerated comparison so you guys can kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about. Especially for those that are new and maybe they have a GT and that's their first board or whatever. Yeah. The XR really has sort of a almost like a homemade type of sense to it. It has this a dude made it in his shed kind of look to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not cutting it down in any way by saying that. I'm overstating this illustration just to make a point.
And I think that's the way they wanted to do is make it kind of simple look.
Well, it was very simple squared off profile rails.
Yeah.
It was easy to produce. So going from that to the Pint has rounded profile rails and the boxes and the bumpers have a much more integrated kind of thing to them. The foot pads are injection molded plastic instead of the CNC cut plywood foot pads and all that. So the Pint really, I had other people use this illustration. The Pint looks like it was made by Walmart, whereas the XR looks like it was made by an enthusiast. And that's kind of what I mean by that. You look at the XR and you go, yeah, that kind of has I engineered it because I'm an enthusiast, but I did it the simplest way possible. The Pint has this corporate, we're going to really use CAD to design this and make it more finished and polished and look like something you could buy at a department store type of sense to it.
Yeah.
So the Pint was sort of a quantum leap forward. Now going from the V1 to the Plus was kind of a quantum leap forward too, in technology and performance and that.
Right.
But then the Pint just overall architecture changed. And then when the GT came out, a lot of people kidded around, called it a maxi Pint because it's a very similar, like you've never seen an XR. I took an XR apart this morning, sort of a stock one in my workshop. the XR is a completely different platform, but the Pint versus, say, the GT or the GTS are very, very similar. If you know how to take a Pint apart, you'll know how to take a GTS apart. But if you take
I've seen some of the components of those XRs, and it's just
it's weird. But so if you're used to, like, you know, the Pint
cabling was completely different.
The connectors there's these weird gang plugs, everything.
Yeah.
So it was a quantum leap forward going from the XR to the Pint, which was then just people that kid around again that the GT is a maxi Pint, kind of. The GT is just a much bigger version of the Pint.
Of course, yeah.
And then the GTS is the higher performance version. So you had the V1 and then the Plus, then the XR was a high performance version of the Plus. The Pint came out. Then they came out with the Pint X and now the Pint S. So then the GT came out. That was the first large format version of the Pint architecture.
Yeah.
And then the GTS came out, which was the performance version of the GT. And then you can get it in the rally version or straight rail version. Mm-hmm. Now we've got the GT XL, which is technically the GTS extra long, but it's not a quantum leap forward, but it is a pretty decent leap forward. The firmware is different on the GT XL. Yeah, so the battery, they went from the battery is
134, 134 volts. No.
Well, the GTS and GT XL have the same voltage battery, but the XL uses different cells, P50B cells, which are they're just a more robust cell.
Yeah.
And so the pack has more capacity, more current discharge capability, but also they've done something with the firmware. I think the MOSFETs on the board are slightly beefed up on the XL, but the XL, when you ride it, it's just it's not otherworldly, but it is definitely a step up from the GTS.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
So, but riding, it's interesting. Going back to being a newbie riding, eventually I ran across a few people that were giving me some pointers on riding. One of the main things was that every time I got on the board, my stance was different because I could barely ride as it was. So as it is, I'm on the board. Oh, geez, whoa, like this. And so sometimes I'm standing with my feet parallel. Sometimes they're near the tire. Sometimes they're wider from the tire. Sometimes they're at a V shape. I mean, it was ridiculous. And eventually I thought to myself, with how sensitive it is, a single-wheeled platform, I should probably figure out the stance that is right for me. Yeah. So then I started experimenting with it, and I'm like, geez.
Oops.
Oh, well, can edit that out. So I'm like, do I like a wide stance? Do I like a narrow stance? Do I like my feet, at a V? Do I like them parallel? What do I like? And nobody was at that point giving me pointers on riding. And it took me a while to adopt the stance that I have now, which is rear foot parallel to the edge of the board at a 90 on the board, all the way to the end of the foot pad. And my front foot, which is for me is my right foot, is at an angle. Yeah. Not necessarily a complete 45, but at a bit of an angle. Yeah. That became my go-to stance. And then every time I'd get on the board, I would plant my rear foot, plant my front foot, get it where I wanted, because it's hard to move your feet around on the foot pads while you're moving. And then I would ride. And angling my front foot like that, I sort of innately knew that was going to be a better way to ride. But it felt weird because I felt like I had less control until I realized you do, depending on your riding style, but you tend to do more steering with your rear foot than your right, or than your front foot anyway. And so eventually I adopted that stance. That became my go-to stance. And at that point, people started giving me advice. Things like, don't stand perfectly straight leg, bend your knees, lean forward slightly, experiment with moving your shoulders versus moving your hips, and find what works for you. And they give me pointers on this riding, this stance is better for, rough terrain or whatever. Yeah. And the pointers have always helped. Yeah. Last week I mentioned Neil Bennett gave me some pointers on offsetting your foot stance for off-road. That has reduced a lot of the wiggles. Well,
I tell you, the first time I hit a wobble, I can't believe I pulled it out of the wobble though, because I was on that XRC and I was riding almost pushback. I was going about 20, right 19 to 20 miles per hour. And I'm going up a hill and I'm doing that. And it started to just go, you know how it is, just whoa, 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 whoa. And it's like, I'm going to crash. I'm going to crash. And I just ranked back on it. I mean, and I pulled it out, and that was just like, oh boy.
Yeah.
That would not have been good.
Yeah, speed wobbles are horrible. Yeah, it's terrifying.
And at that time, I have my stances like this, and now, of course, I ride more like this with my front foot forward, but even maybe a little bit like this, but I was just straight.
Yeah, I've noticed your stance. Dave and I both ride goofy foot, right foot forward. Yeah. So your stance is so I do rear foot at a 90, front foot at like a probably 40 degrees. Your rear foot is slightly toe forward.
Yeah, and that's why I used to ride a snowboard. And I could, in my eyes, I could push this way back.
It puts you in a more forward stance.
Yeah, I could carve a little bit better because you're carved from the back.
I've tried it. It just, for whatever reason, I can't. Yeah. I've never gotten used to it, but I tried doing that because I figured that might be.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their.
Everybody's different. Everybody's physiology is different too.
So a lot of people that are riding on those trails, they have that. Are they called overland?
The overlanders.
Overlanders, and that's just like a big piece of
bent
like
plate.
That. And so you really have to have it like. You don't get that much of a.
If you're a wide stance person, they're pretty good.
You're more straight, I think, when you're wearing.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of people that have their foot on an angle. They just catch their toe under it. I guess they catch the toe on it, yeah. And I think there's different pads they can put on. I will say one kind of good thing about the overlanders is they do protect the board if you slam into something because they're, but footholds definitely are, it's one of those very personalized things. Everybody wants their footholds different. Yeah. And it's interesting because now I say all my boards, but here's one without footholds. All the boards that I ride on a regular basis, I have footholds on, not because I'm going to be jumping the board or whatever, but they're foot location devices. Yeah. Because as you ride, you hit bumps, whatever, your feet will move around some. So it is nice to have foot location on the board. That is something that helps, riding style. But it is interesting. I've watched a bunch of guys that have been riding far longer and more miles than I ride, and some of the stance that they use. And I got to tell you, if you run across somebody that is more experienced than you are, definitely take their advice.
Oh, I always do.
But it may not apply to your riding style or your body's physiology, your weight, your board, the components you have, whatever. Yeah. So, but if somebody has more experience than you do, listen to them. Because even though I'm not the greatest rider in the world, I wouldn't be half as far as I am without listening to others. Yeah. Even my boys, they're not as into one-wheeling as I am, but they're better at it. They have better hand-to-eye coordination than I do. And they'll tell me, they're like, Dad, I've noticed that you do this when you ride. Don't do that, do this. Yeah. I'm like, wow, that really works. Now, that being said, though, my youngest son, Joshua, and I almost can guarantee you he's not watching, but if you are, he rides totally straight-legged, which terrifies me, because if you hit a hard bump, your knees, and no safety gear. So hands in his pockets, straight leg, no safety gear.
Wow.
And he doesn't lean much with his hips. He kind of pendulums his whole body. And I'm like, wow. Now he does understand, I was just saying before, he knows how to ride well. He does understand, like if we're going to be riding aggressively off-road, he'll crouch down, hands out of the pockets, and he knows how to ride well. But, we were talking earlier about people that just like to cruise. Kyle Wong is one of them. He just likes to cruise. Yeah. A lot of people, my son prefers just cruising. So he'll cruise totally upright, legs bolt straight, and his hands in his pockets. And I'm like, dude.
And I think, talk about cruising, I think it's being new to the sport. I mean, I feel that I'm still leery on hurting my body, so I'm very cautious of what...
Being old as you are.
I know, I'm ancient, right? I just feel that maybe a lot has to do that I'm still working on muscle memory. I'm still working on muscles that I need to function the board correctly. If you watch like Austin Silva or what I believe his name is Luke Austin. You know.
Yes.
They ride mostly. I mean, their shocks are their knees.
Oh yeah.
And they're squatting the whole time, and they take a bump or they ride over a hill, and their upper torso's not doing anything. It's everything's all lower.
Oh yeah.
It's just like
when we were at Atwood. Oh my gosh. So some of those like 3-foot whoops that we were going over, and I'm watching guys, and I'm like, their shoulders are only going up and down like a foot,
right.
And the board is going up 2.5, 3 feet.
400 squats on a ride.
So there's a lot, and that's another thing too. Street is, I am not the person to ask about trail riding because it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I love it. I've learned to love it since riding with Dave, but it's not. So don't ever take my advice on trail riding because not my thing.
We got some trails going.
But I've got thousands of street miles under my belt, and I will say that yes, your legs are really good suspension. One of the reasons that I put suspension on this board was because early on, my body wasn't used to it. Now I'm used to riding, and it's
you
still
got to get that muscle memory.
You get the
build the muscles where you need it, and
exactly. And so now I ride with my legs bent, and I've always been an avid bicyclist.
Yeah.
So when you're standing up on a bicycle, you're not standing up with your legs dead straight either. And so I've been used to, my legs can handle holding weight being bent for a long period of time. So I was always fine with that, but I had joint issues, and a lot of this is probably more age than anything else.
Yeah.
But my knees would start to lock, kind of like if you hook your knuckles and pull and then do like the joints will kind of stick. My knees would encounter that.
Yeah.
And so the suspension was really good. I really, really enjoyed that. But now that I have more miles under my belt, and I've gotten used to carrying the weight better with my legs. Also, I will say that riding, I got used to riding. I wasn't a skateboarder when I was a kid, but as an adult, I have a couple of electric skateboards that I built from scratch. Mm-hmm. And I got used to riding those. And with a regular skateboard, you really lean a lot to carve. I mean, the board really rotates.
Trucks are loose. You really adjust it.
With a OneWheel, you're like this. You change pitch 5 degrees to lean, to corner. Unless you're going really slow. If you're going really slow, you're going to dip the board down. But I'm talking, if you're cruising anything more than 10 miles an hour and you're carving hard, the board is you're only pitching the board like 5 degrees to carve. Yeah. Whereas with a skateboard, it's not that way. You are leaning that deck. And so if you come from a skateboarding background, this is way different. And snowboarding too, because you're really leaning the board hard.
Yeah.
It's very different from a OneWheel.
Well, there's some guys out there that ride these things like skateboards. This is insane how they can slide them and they jump and spin them and.
Well, especially considering it's 30-pound item and they're spinning them around.
I know it's not a 5-pound skateboard. So
I know some of the street guys that are flipping the boards around are.
It's insane. Well, that whole freestyle. Future Motion had that whole freestyle competition, over the summer. It was pretty cool what those guys are doing.
Yeah, it is. So that's another thing too. I don't know how many of you guys have run into this, but when I was very new with the OneWheel, I don't get it so much anymore, but I used to get it all the time. Do a kickflip. And I don't know if they're kidding or they just don't know what they're. But that was the most irritating comment in the world. Do a kickflip. Go away.
Well, it was hard with the 20-some pound board.
So let me ask you this, Dave. One of the things that my son and I both noticed, and this continues to this day, but going back 5 years ago when we were new, all the way up to the present day, if we're out riding in public and there's people on sidewalks and stuff, the people that ask us the most questions, far and away, the demographic, old ladies.
Old ladies, yeah. They give you that smile.
Now,
What's
and
that?
I thought maybe it's because I'm in my 50s, whatever. Maybe. So that's what I thought it was. No. Because my 22-year-old son, who's been riding since he was 17, gets the same thing. He'd come home, 18 years old, whatever. He's got the pint, and he's like, 3 old ladies on my trip. Not in a group. 3 separate times on my trip, run across an old lady on a sidewalk. That looks so much fun. I know. So
it's so cool, though.
It is really cool, and that if it's a little old lady, she's not giving you a hard time. Like if an 18-year-old kid holler something at me as I ride by. At times, I don't know, do they really want to see the board? Are they, because I've gotten some rude comments too,
Yeah, you do.
Get off that thing, old man. I've heard stuff like that before, whatever.
Yeah.
But, so I don't, with a teenage dude, I don't know if he wants to see the board, if he's interested in it, or if he's being rude, or what the deal is. But with an old lady, she's not giving you a hard, unless she's yelling at you, get off the sidewalk. But I've never encountered that with an old lady. I've gotten that with young families, and someone in a kid in a stroller, and they'll tell me, get off the sidewalk. I've had that a couple of times, but and I just. I usually I'll tip my helmet forward, let them by, and
yeah, I think that when we ride, we're pretty cautious when we come up to people on the
we ride
on the
pretty
trail.
chill.
We'll slow down, and on your left or on your right, we give them notice. I guess you do. We do. Maybe you get a little look sometimes, but like you said, it's the older crowd. They're just more interested on what it is you're doing.
Yeah, and OneWheels have become more known now, especially when you live in a given town and you ride a lot. People just get used to seeing you.
Yeah.
I mean, so I live in the town of Island Lake. Anyone that's ordered anything from me sees our, address. That's where it comes from. Island Lake's a small town. There's like 4,000 people there, and there are. If I look at the app, you look at the app and it shows how many people are in your town. There's like a dozen people in Island Lake that own OneWheels.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen a couple of them, though, other than me. And then Wakanda, which is our neighboring town, that there's, I don't know, half a dozen people there. But I've only run across a couple. Now, let me ask you this. This is another thing that I've noticed that I've encountered while riding. Every single time, I think I've run across maybe a dozen strangers on a OneWheel also. Yeah. Every single time I've run across another person on a board, they run away from me.
Absolutely they do. I don't know why.
What is the deal with that?
They just keep cruising like you're like, hey.
Well, and it's not even they keep cruising. This will happen. Like I'll see a block ahead or whatever, somebody's,
they see you coming like
whatever, and I'll wave. They look over at me. They nose the board down, and they'll like take a corner and leave, like they're purposely trying to get away from me.
And maybe that's that.
It's odd.
If they feel like they don't want to be seen because maybe someone will say you're riding wrong or something like that.
I don't know. Maybe because I've wondered about this. Do they want to be left alone? They're a loner and that's why they want to ride their board. They don't, or I don't know. They don't want to be stopped and asked questions. I don't know. But another one-wheeler, I sometimes don't want to stop and answer questions of pedestrian, even though I know we're to be ambassadors for the sport, and I do as much as I can. Yeah. But there are times I don't want to stop, especially if it's a group of people, because like now it's going to take me a half hour to get through answering everybody's questions. I only have 40 minutes to ride, whatever it is.
Right.
But somebody else on a board, I mean, this is not the most common hobby in the world. You would think they'd want to talk, but every single one of them takes off.
Yeah, I've experienced myself, but I think one of the things is if they just stop and talk to you, they're going to find out, there's group rides going on. You can hook up, and maybe they need to. I don't know. I just don't understand either. It's happened to me a couple times too. So my experience is they just blaze right by me. There's.
I mean, and then part of me too is like so. Kind of the mission that Dave and I are on is to get the youth into one-wheeling, partly because of the amount of coordination it takes, but also let's get them off their phones, get them outside and do something active. And even though this doesn't, I know there 2-3 years ago, there was this big thing online about does one-wheeling give you any exercise or not? Okay, I'll say it this way. It doesn't necessarily burn a few. It's not a calorie-burning thing, but it does strengthen your core and your legs and your glutes and all that.
Balance.
Balance. So it is actually good for your physiology to do. So I want to get the youth into it, but I got to say this though. I keep thinking to myself, one of these days I'm going to run across like an 8-year-old on a pint by himself, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to be the one that's not going to want to ride away, but I'm thinking to myself, now I'm the creepy dude in his 50s talking to a kid. So that I think I got to.
There's over there's a dad with him,
if there's a dad with him,
we're all in.
I will say this. I've run across several youth, whatever, in their teens on electric scooters and that have stopped me and asked about the board. They're usually really cool.
Yeah.
Now, they're usually kind of insane in the way they're riding around town, but they're generally pretty cool to talk to, partly because I'm rarely out on a board. Like, I've got a totally bone stock XR Classic. I've got a bone stock Pint X. I do have some stock boards, but typically when I'm out, I'm doing some product research, so I'm riding tricked out boards.
Yeah.
So the younger guys they'll know and they'll stop me and ask. I did have one guy in Wakanda, our neighboring town, that I was riding, and this was early on. I was on an XR with my parts on it, and a guy had stopped me. There was I think he was either with the cable company or the power company. He was running cable. Anyway, he stopped me and I said, "You curious about this? It's a OneWheel." He goes, "No, I know what it is, and I know who you are." And I'm like, "Oh," he said, "Yeah, I know all about tech rail stuff." I said, "You have a board?" "No, but I know about it." So that was kind of cool. And that's another thing too. I kind of assumed once tech rails became more known that when I'm out and about and I run across another one-wheeler, they might know who I am and be more willing to stop and talk.
Yeah.
But no, they still just take off.
Wow.
It's really odd. I will occasionally run across somebody that recognizes the tech rail shirt that I'm wearing. Yeah. And they'll say, "Oh, tech rail's good stuff." Yeah, thanks.
Well, hey, I got another question for you.
What's that?
This is a good one. Tell me about your first experience on a group ride. More than one person group ride.
More than one. Okay, so I've been on a lot of rides with just a couple friends. So, for instance, my son, Jeremiah, he's got a Pint, and so we'll go out, myself, my two boys, and then maybe one or two of their friends that'll either have a board of their own or grab a couple of ours or whatever. Right. That's a different deal because I know everybody. The first actual group ride of like a club, that was the Arizona one-wheel crew.
Okay.
And that was about a year ago. We were down in Arizona visiting my family, and so the guys down there found out that I was in town, and so they organized a group ride kind of in my honor, I guess.
That's cool.
I think there were 35 guys there. There were a few guys on just scooters or EUCs, but it was mostly one-wheels. And I got to tell you, the skill level of those guys was intense. They were very, very nice and accommodating. It felt odd because every single person there was a stranger to me. Yeah. By the end of the ride, I got to know everybody, but they were all strangers to me. It was pretty cool, though, seeing some of the guys that I had only ever known online. Yeah. And, a handful of guys came up and shook my hand, and they're like, "I'm so-and-so online." "Oh, dude, so nice to meet you." That was really cool.
That's pretty cool.
And so there were a few familiar faces, but everybody was still a stranger to me as far as, getting to know them face to face. So that was a good ride, and I was a little bit concerned, number one, that I'd be able to keep up, because I normally just ride by myself. I'm pretty mellow and laid back. Yeah. They were more high-skilled than I was, and a couple of them were really fast, and they'd ride way ahead of everybody and then wait. A couple VESC boards that'd go 40-plus miles an hour, and they'd disappear, and then they'd wait for us at the next corner or whatever. But I think also one problem with who I am is that people kind of treat me with kid gloves, so to speak. Yeah. "Oh, it's Matt. Everybody rides slow. It's Matt." So it's like, well, I don't want to be just everybody disappear and I'm left in their dust. Yeah. But at the same time, I want people to just be who they are. Yeah, of course. But that was really cool. But that opened my eyes to how welcoming the groups of people are, especially since, again, every time I ran across an individual when I'm out riding, they take off. Yeah. So and then I was at Atwood, and there've been a couple other group rides that I've been at that were smaller, 7, 8 guys or whatever.
Yeah. Well, my first one was first part of the summer last year, or this last summer. Just watching the feeds on Facebook. I joined, Isabel from the area. She, put a post out there. "Hey, anybody want to ride at Silver Lake?"
She is the one-wheel ambassador in our area.
Oh, heck yeah, she is.
Like, big time.
So she's definitely involved in anything out here.
And a good rider.
She's a good rider. Yeah, her and Sarah Anderson are very good riders. So, I show up, first time in a group ride. This is the first time I've ever ridden with anybody besides just myself. So I'm like telling my wife, oh my gosh, I'm going to go ride with people. She's like, all right, go, get out there, go do it,
Your wife is very encouraging to get out there and do stuff. I think a lot of that's the losing of the weight and stuff too. You became active and you're a different personality.
So I show up, and I park my car. Of course, I'm there like a half an hour, 45 minutes early, just I'm nervous. I get the board out, and I think Isabel showed up first, and I don't know any of these people. I just post on Facebook pictures, so I kind of see who they are. Sarah shows up. There's a gentleman named Chris, and there was one other person. So there was only, 5 of us? And we're going down, and again, Silver Lake, awesome place to go.
Still haven't been there. Everybody tells me.
Right across the border of Wisconsin.
Constantly
it is
people
gorgeous
tell me I gotta go
area. Awesome
Wrong time
lake.
of year to be in Wisconsin, though.
You're going on these. There's some, and it's 100% mountain bike trails, and they're up and down. They're awesome. So, but for a newbie, it is an eye opener. So that was my first experience. One, I get there, we're all taking out their boards and stuff like that, and one of the gentlemen goes, I'm looking at his board. He says, hop on there, ride in them. Oh. Okay, I'm not I'm still, I usually have my board on safety stop or whatever.
Simple stop, yeah.
This is me,
I use simple stop too, just because of I don't want the board to ghost. I want it to shut down, so I use it too. I dismount by heel lift, but I have simple stop.
Back in my early days, I could ride my snowboard backwards and probably do a little skateboard backwards, but it's a little different. I'm still getting used to that part. I
just have no interest in riding backward.
I'm going to be honest with you. So I hop on, and I thank gosh I didn't wreck the guy's board, but it was on very quickly. It was super cool, and then I see him putting on all this motorcycle gear, and I'm like, oh geez, where am I at? Right? It's the full chest harness and stuff, and Isabel's getting her gear on, and I got the classic
little
beginner
cup elbow
pads, wrist guards, and knee pads, right? And I have a helmet, and this guy Chris, he barely had any type of safety gear, but he was pretty cool. So we go on these trails. And you're not going fast. I mean, there's roots going across, trees, you're hopping up. And it put that's when I just had the XR. And I just put the GTS motor in it. So I had that.
Yeah.
And it gave me a little bit more torque. But still, there were some times where, and I'm barely crawling up these hills because it's just, where you get up to a root and you're just like trying to go over, and then all of a sudden the board just gives out and you fall. But I actually I got a little beat up on that ride, pretty good, and I tapped out early. I'll see you later, and I could barely ride home. I was holding I think I had self-driving on the Tesla at that time, and I think it drove most of me home because I was so sore. It was
from falling.
From falling.
From falling, okay.
Oh my gosh, it was an eye-opener. But again,
it's funny. I didn't at Atwood. I never fell. I jumped off a bunch of times.
Yeah, well,
I didn't fall.
Atwood's awesome. These trails over at Silver Lake, they're intense. They're fun. Now I can go with this board, and I can cruise up the trails pretty good. And before that, after I rode with those guys, I went a couple extra times with my son. He has an electric scooter off-road one, and we went on those trails and practiced a little bit. It was pretty fun. And I've gone since then by myself and rode on those trails, but you got to definitely go out there. There's some really good ones. There must be I don't know, 13 or 14 different trails you can ride. They're all
I've talked with
different levels.
Bicyclists that have mentioned it too. They're like,
it's so gorgeous. A lot of people, it's a very nice place to go. And but that was my first experience with OneWheel community. And they were super nice. Isabel's great. She invites you in, tells you everybody who's there. And Sarah's awesome. Sarah's a super good racer. She's won a bunch of times last year. Came in first place a bunch of races. So it was nice to actually meet them and have friendships with them now. So
It is interesting once you meet people. I mentioned before seeing familiar faces in person that I had only ever seen online.
Yeah.
Now I've got the reverse. When we were at Atwood, a number of the guys that I met there, and ladies, there were a few women there, now I've seen online, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I know who that is.
Yeah, super good racers.
Cool.
So it's nice to know that, because that's when I had that, the XRC, and I had those flight pins on there. And that one of them said, I think it might have been Isabel or Sarah, or, that gentleman, I can't remember his name, I apologize. But they were like, your stance is really too close to the wheel. Do you have the spacers for those things? And I'm like, yeah, I took them off. They're like, you might want to put those on just to give yourself a little bit more stance on
wider
the outer.
Stance gives you some.
I
more
was just
stability.
riding so close to here, and that's why I was, every time I came up to a rut in the trail or a route or something like that, it would just, there was too much. At that time, I still had a little bit more body weight, and it was just too much to get over those things. And plus, I was going too slow too, so it just would give out.
Yeah, wider. I mean, a lot of people like a narrow stance. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But I will say that a wide stance, at least for me, gives me better control.
Yeah, it was definitely an eye changer. But that got the gear, went back, and I kept going on it. And I'm just completely dedicated to. My goal is to ride a race and not fall, because I do. I mean, I'm just like. We all do it.
Well, the reality, though, is that if you're not falling at all, you're probably not pushing hard enough.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would tell me that, well, yeah, you didn't fall at Atwood because you weren't pushing hard. I had to jump off several times, but I was shocked I didn't go down, though, because I was...
Yeah, you did really well.
Beyond my limit.
Yeah.
By the end of the day, I was a lot faster than I started and more stable, but, I don't like falling. Nobody likes falling, but I don't know.
That first time we took off with at Atwood, you blazed off with everybody, and I kind of stayed on the back of the pack, and you were right there with them.
Well, the nice thing about following behind people is you can follow their line, you can see where the trail's off camber, and you can plan for it.
Yeah, because I stopped for something and I took a wrong trail, and I got back to everybody first.
So should we wrap this up?
Yeah. So
in about an hour or so.
Yeah, I think that was hopefully, if you have any questions, definitely email us. No one's emailed us yet.
Did you forget to put the email address?
No, I did. I put it on there.
Okay.
I put it on there.
Well, maybe we can tell people.
I'm going to put yours on there too for tech rails and stuff.
Well, and we have giveaways.
We do.
So
I think next week I'm going to pop out the giveaways and show everybody what we're giving away, and we still have to decide how we're going to do that.
Yeah, it's got to be comments or emails or something. So, encourage people to comment, but that'll be next week.
Kyle Wong, he made it happen.
Yeah,
so we got two different bags to give away. So
some Chillis stuff.
It's all Chillis stuff. So again, support his page too. Go to Chillis, on Facebook and stuff. He's writing some good editorials on stuff. He's doing a lot of research on, the big tires, and it's just good stuff. And on this video too, he did send me a video of him riding in the land of Teletubbies yesterday or the day before. So it was luscious green trail that he was on, in California. He lives right out of Pasadena, and it is so nice out there right now. He was, telling me it was 80 degrees, and I was telling him it was 20 here. So, nice and cold here, and there's gorgeous weather out there. So I do envy him. But again, email us at aboveboardpodcast@gmail.com. Again, I'll put it on there, and hopefully this was what you're looking for. So again, if you want us to talk about something or test something or whatever, just let us know. So we love this. We're enthusiasts. We get geeked out over all this stuff, and
we just have these conversations. We talked for 45 minutes earlier today on the phone.
Yes, we did.
Just yakking, and that was the whole point to this. I mean, there can be a purpose to it. I mean, we've shown products and stuff, but I don't want this to be one long commercial. So whatever, but it's, we have conversations and it's like, well, we should have recorded that. That would have been great. So that's the point to this. This isn't meant to be earth shattering or,
No.
but we just wanted to enjoy it. And the reality is there used to be a bunch of podcasts and they've kind of gone by the wayside. So
trying to bring that back. So we just want to keep the community going.
Interaction.
Yeah, if you want us to do a shout out about something you guys got coming up on, one of your Facebook pages, let us know. We will definitely push it for you. So
we'll evaluate it anyway.
Well, there you go. Well, again, thank you again. Hit the little whatever you call it, subscribe thing or whatever.
Yeah, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.